Okay, well, welcome back. Welcome. Today we're going to be into 1 Samuel 11. But in the meantime, today is October 6th, a red letter day. Last week was more of a kind of a beige letter day. Today is a red letter day. I'm telling you, man, I'm like going on and on. Sometimes it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get to 1 Samuel 11. There's all kinds of fun stuff to talk about today. Well, first of all, it was on this date in 1528 that Ursula von Munsterberg escaped from her convent in Germany. She had been a Catholic nun and had become influenced by the writings of one Martin Luther, and so she escaped, and that's how they phrase it. She escaped her convent, and she took two other nuns with her. One of those nuns was Katerina von Bora, who would go on to marry Martin Luther, and was known for being Martin Luther's wife and somebody who made a good bottle of beer. But that was on this date. Ursula von Munsterberg escaped on this date. In 1536, William Tyndale was executed. More like murdered. I mean, but it's an execution. Tyndale was famous for advocating an English Bible, translation of the English Bible, and in fact translated, I believe, the whole New Testament. Is that right? The whole?
I can't remember.
I believe most of, or if not the whole New Testament. And of course, nowadays, the Tyndale Publishing House and all that is named after him. But the irony of the whole thing is that he was executed for this. It was a big thing. I think, oh no, you can't. We need to keep it in Latin and all of that. There's a number of reasons why that was. But the irony in all of this is that 2 years later, the first English Bible was published, and I forgot the name of it now. But it was 2 years later that in that short of time, and I think part of it was, the effect of having executed Tyndale. But that was on this date in 1536. In 1683, 16 Mennonite families founded Germantown, Philadelphia, which is now a neighborhood in Philadelphia. They started it as a town, but it's also the birthplace of the American anti-slavery movement. The Mennonites, the Mennonites and the Amish and the Quakers are like three groups that have been consistently anti-slavery their entire life. Okay, the Baptists have not been. Witness the Southern Baptist Convention. Why does the Southern Baptist Convention exist? Originally, well, it was to protect the slaveholding interests of the people there. But be that as it may, it was on this date in 1683. In 1866, there was the first train robbery. The Reno brothers got away with $13,000, and then they made a movie of it soon afterwards. No, I don't know. Actually, I forgot. What I forgot to do is I forgot to check how much $13,000 is worth today. I believe it's quite a bit more relative to purchasing power. But that was on this date in 1866. In 1882, the first World Series baseball game was played. It was the Cincinnati Red Stockings versus the Chicago White Stockings. And I do not believe that matchup will be repeated this year. Just saying, that's from what I hear.
What year was that again?
1882.
82, thank you.
And the White Stockings lost. So I guess some things have not changed.
Premonition.
Yeah. We should have known that. It was on this date in 1890 that the Mormons outlawed polygamy. That's when they decided not to make that a canon of their church. That's a whole interesting story. And I'm certain it had nothing to do with the fact that Utah wanted to become a state, and the federal government said you'll never be a state as long as you have polygamy. And I believe it was the next year that Utah became a state. So I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. It was just kind of an independent sort of thing. I read a book, Under the Banner of Heaven. Has anybody read Under the Banner of Heaven by John Krakauer? And he relates a story in there about polygamy, that this was something that Joseph Smith had discovered. And when he, at some point, he's having a conversation with Brigham Young, and he's telling Brigham Young, you need to become a polygamist. And Brigham Young's response was, something along the line of, oh, Joseph, don't put this burden on me. Okay, so you think, okay, well, yeah, he's against it. Then you find out that Brigham Young turned out to have 52 wives or something like that. I'm like, okay, well, you weren't really resisting that hard.
He didn't call them wives. I went to Salt Lake City once and took the tour, which was very interesting. And when a woman's husband had died and she's a widow, he would take her in to, take care of her or whatever, and so they all kind of lived together. But, when I challenged one of the sweet young people who were sweet and very kind, taking you on the tour, well, were they considered wives? Oh no. Oh no. Like, you just kind
He had
of
52 women living with him.
Right.
Oh no.
I know that at one point, Brigham Young had a football, Steve Young, a football quarterback that was very well known. Did he make it in the NFL? I don't remember. But he's related to Brigham Young. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? Kind of have this. Then I realized that if your name is Young in Utah, chances are really good you're related to Brigham Young. Because when you have 52 women living with you who are considered wives, these things happen. Now this may bring back fond memories for some, but it was on this date in 1893 that Nabisco invented or introduced to the world cream of wheat. Anybody like cream of wheat? Mm-hmm. That was always, when I was growing up, cream of wheat was like the last ditch food of the desperate kind of thing. It's like there is nothing else to eat for breakfast. I go hungry or I have cream of wheat. And I was like, okay, hungry doesn't look that bad, but be that as it may. So yeah, that was on this date in 1893. In 1896, Jose Rizal was arrested. Jose Rizal, an eye doctor in the Philippines, opposing the Spanish rule and then the U.S. rule. Rizal is like one of the heroes of the Philippine. I told you that was going to happen. Okay, the Philippine history and story. We talk about people like Nathan Hale or George Washington or these great heroes of the past. Jose Rizal is an eye doctor and a writer. And one of the great novels is Noli Me Tangere, which I forget what it means in English. Touch not or something like that. But you can go to, there's a Spanish, help me out here, Holly, if I'm wrong. There's like a fort you can go to where in Manila where Rizal was kept, and they've got a great big brass statue of his head, like there. And I went there, and I should find these pictures, at least when I do the posting on the line. I went there in 2004, and to the Philippines. I went there and I saw it, and took a picture of it. And then I went again in 2020 with Jim and Peg Gusson on Bible Mission. We went there again. And I took a picture of the same thing 15 years later. It's interesting how it's changed. It's like where the people rubbed it. It's kind of like Lincoln's nose, on the monument. But that was on this date. In 1917, today is the date of the Battle of Passchendaele. The Battle of Passchendaele. Anybody familiar with the Battle of Passchendaele? Okay, we have no Canadians in the room then. Okay. Being half Canadian, this is my people here. It's a World War I battle. It was a major victory, and the first time that the Canadian Army was the majority kind of responsible for the victory. So within the Canadian zeitgeist, the Battle of Passchendaele is a great event. It's part of their, when they knew, because up until that time Canada was independent, but it was sort of like, yeah, we're independent, but we're kind of like Britain. Okay, so it's like Canada didn't even have an embassy in the U.S. until 1927. If you needed to do business with Canada, you went to the British embassy. Up until, even though they had been independent since 1867, it wasn't until the 1920s that they actually had one. But Passchendaele. Side note, you know the War of 1812. You've all heard of that. The Canadians think they won. Just so you know, you go to Canada and you talk about the War of 1812. It's like, yeah, we won. No, we won. We're Americans. We win everything. Maybe not. But be that as it may, that's your Canadian cultural lesson for the day. I told you there was a bunch of stuff today. I'm telling you. The movie The Jazz Singer was released on this date in 1927, the first talkie with Al Jolson. Speaking of baseball, in 1945. Okay, 1945. Who was in the World Series? Anybody know?
Oh, hey,
The
good
Cubs
guys,
were.
us.
The Cubs were. Yes.
Detroit Tigers.
In 1945, Sam Cianis, restaurateur in the Chicago area, bought a seat for his goat in the bleachers, and he was refused admission. You can't bring your goat in here. So Sam Cianis said, okay, I'm not going to come in there, but me and my goat are going to curse the Chicago Cubs. Look it up. I'm not making this stuff up here. I'm just a reporter here. I'm just giving the news. So he cursed the Chicago Cubs, and every once in a while, you'll hear a reference to the goat curse on the Cubs. And in fact, at one point, I'm not sure when it was, fairly recently, within the last 10 or 20 years, they did like a whole voodoo ceremony where they brought a goat out there and kind of tried to release the curse on the Wrigley Field and something like that. But two more things, and then I'm going to actually get to Samuel. On this date in 1952, the Mousetrap, the play The Mousetrap opened in London. In 1952, Agatha Christie story, The Mousetrap. It is still running to this day.
Yes, it is.
Tickets are available for tomorrow night's show for £35 if you're interested. See, in London, they don't do theater on Sunday. So in the US, there's no theater on Monday. So you can go to theater on Sunday, but not on Monday. In London, you go to theater on Monday, you don't go on Sunday. But £35 gets you a seat. I'm not sure what that is. I think that's about $50. But it's still running. It is the single longest running play ever, kind of thing. And finally, on this day in 1973, and the more things change, the more they say the same. It was on this date in 1973 that the Yom Kippur War started in Israel. That was, again, another. I think it's easier to just keep track of the periods of peace that Israel has had than kind of keep track of all the different wars. But that took place on this date. Okay. Well, yeah, it's a good. And I didn't even say everything. I mean, there were other things that we could have talked about. But all right, 1 Samuel 11. Let's get back into this. When we last left our heroes, remember I talked about the event in Judges chapter 19 through 21, the Benjaminite War. Okay, the Benjaminite War, you've got this guy with a concubine, comes into Gilgal. Comes into Gilgal, the men circle him, they want him, he puts the woman out, she's raped to death by the people of Gilgal, who, the text tells us, were all Benjaminites. He comes out the next day, sees she's dead, takes her home, cuts her into 12 pieces, sends one to each tribe. The tribes gather at Mizpah, they decide we're going to go destroy Jabesh Gilead, the town of Jabesh Gilead. And so they do, they go, they're not Jabesh Gilead, they're going to try to destroy the town of, or the tribe of Benjamin. So they go to great lengths to do that, all but destroy it. And then they discover that they've killed off all the men or all the women, and they got how we're going to replenish this. So they kidnapped 400 women from the town of Jabesh Gilead, and then they set up this ruse where you can run out of the woods, grab women, carry them back to you, and don't call them they're your wives, just say you've known. But and that's thus they replenish the population of the tribe of Benjamin. So this is all stuff that took place is in the background of their mind, that the Benjaminites had been this real problem town. And in 1 Samuel 10, we have Samuel gathering everybody to Mizpah, where they're told, that their new king is going to come from Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, which was probably an interesting moment. It's one of those, if you kind of just sit back and imagine kind of what was going on, sort of like, wait, what, Benjamin? Seriously? We got 11 other tribes to choose from and you pick Benjamin, kind of thing. But that's kind of, how the Lord works sometimes. I suppose very few of us would be here if our position in Christ were dependent on our upbringing or our tribe or whatever, and we'd be thankful for that. So then Saul is announced. Saul is announced to the nation that he is your king, and everybody goes home, kind of thing. Everybody goes home, and Saul goes back to plowing. But there's a couple of people, 1 or 2, 5, 10, 50, we don't know how many, at the end of chapter 10, verse 26. So Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men whose hearts God had touched. But some scoundrels said, I like that. That's the word that they described Hophni and Phinehas earlier. Some scoundrels said, come on everybody. Scoundrel said, how can this fellow save us? How can this fellow save us? And they're talking about militarily. How can he militarily save us? They despised him and brought him no gifts, but Saul kept silent. Saul kept silent, okay? Kind of, you think why, maybe Saul is still kind of warming to his position. He's kind of not quite sure that he should be the king. Maybe there's a little imposter syndrome going on, who knows, but Saul's not entering into this conversation at this point, okay? So, we're back up to where we are in 1 Samuel chapter 11. And this is Saul's first big event. Okay, Saul's first big event starts in chapter 11. Nahash the Ammonite, Nahash. I haven't read that aloud, and it sounds funny. Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said to him, make a treaty with us, and we will be subject to you. Okay? First of all, we need to keep track of where everybody is, and if you have your handy map, you can pull it out here and notice that we're dealing on the east side of the Jordan River. Okay? So Ammon is in the is on the east side of the Jordan River, kind of on the south end, sort of south half area. Jabesh Gilead is a town that's also on the east side of the Jordan River, but it's kind of mid-north a bit. Okay, so everything's happening on the east side of the Jordan River, which is what now is Jordan, the country of Jordan. And so I want to look that if you have an NIV, the NIV text kind of gives an interesting, the Masoretic text and the Dead Sea Scrolls. I told you we've got, 4 major sources and some conflict sometimes. But it said the Masoretic text reads that now Nahash, king of the Ammonites, oppressed the Gadites and the Reubenites severely. He gouged out all their right eyes and struck terror and dread in Israel. Not a man remained among the Israelites beyond the Jordan whose right eye was not gouged out by Nahash, king of the Ammonites, except that 7,000 men fled from the Ammonites and entered Jabesh Gilead. Okay, this is all between the end of chapter 10 and chapter 11 in these 2 other texts. Okay, and what we learn from that, again, is it accurate or not, that Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, had been at battle with the tribes of Reuben and Gad, which, if you know your Joshua, I believe it is, were 2 of the tribes that had settled on the east side of the Jordan River. Okay, it was Gad, Reuben, and I believe the half-tribe, one of the half-tribes, Manasseh, Ephraim, half-tribe of Ephraim, I think is over there. Okay, so there's these 2 tribes, and Nahash had been a thorn in their side to the point where, according to the Masoretic text, he had this interesting technique of going in and gouging out the right eyes of people. Okay, so they go up to Jabesh Gilead. He surrounds Jabesh Gilead, and the people in this town say, now again, Jabesh Gilead, this is the town that did not muster to beat the Benjaminites. So the nation of Israel, the collection of tribes, had attacked Jabesh Gilead, and en route to attacking Jabesh Gilead had stolen half of their, or 400 of their unmarried women, taken them back to Benjamin, kind of thing. So it's interesting that this would not be a town that has a positive connotation to the nation of Israel, or to the rest of the other 10 tribes. Okay, trying to think of something, what would be comparable. Well, I mean, if you talk about, when you get outside of Illinois, people talk about Chicago. All they want to know about are the gangsters. Okay, they don't talk about Michael Jordan. Used to talk about Michael Jordan a lot. I used to have to travel for Ford, and so. And at first, it was, when I first started traveling for Ford, it was great, I'm traveling away from the Chicago or the Chicago area. And by the end of my illustrious career with Ford, if anybody asked, I would say, well, I'm from Illinois. I stopped. I'm from Illinois. Because I'm not from Chicago, okay? Again, I can say, Debbie's not here today, so I can say whatever I want, because Debbie is from Chicago. So she's like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. It's close enough. People in San Antonio don't care that I'm 22 miles away from the city limits. But I'd say from Ohio, or from Illinois, kind of thing. And now I think, probably go around and say I'm from Indiana or pick another state. I don't know. But so when you say, oh, we're going to do something from Chicago, all people think about is, oh, well, you got gangsters, you got people killing people all the time. That's all that happens. You got nothing but violence up there. I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. But there's also 3 million people in the area. There's 5 million people in Cook County. There's 12 million people in a lot of people there. There's a lot of people. A lot more people weren't shot in Chicago this week than were. Okay, doesn't mean that it's not significant the number of people that were, but a lot more were not. Okay, but be that as it may, so people have this reputation of Chicago in their mind, and I got to believe that Jabesh Gilead would have had a similar kind of reputation as well. There's certain connotations, and so suddenly you've got this problem with Jabesh Gilead going on, and the people of Jabesh Gilead. Just again, I'm not sure why, but it's a small town. The Ammonites are a large army. For whatever reason, they look out and they go, "There's no way we're going to win this," and so they sue for peace. Basically, say, "No, we'll make a peace treaty with us." Okay. So let me see here. Ammon is located on the east side of the Jordan River, and their king is Nahash. Note the NIV text. The Masoretic text and Dead Sea Scrolls note that Nahash had attacked the tribes of Gad and Reuben, who had settled on the east side of the Jordan River. So Nahash besieges the town of Jabesh Gilead, which is also on the east side of the Jordan. The leaders of Jabesh Gilead immediately roll over and ask for a treaty. Okay. Nahash the Ammonite replied, "I'll make a treaty with you only on the condition that I gouge out the right eye of every one of you, and so bring disgrace on all Israel." Okay. Now this is an interesting tactic. Okay. Again, did it really happen? I mean, why not? I don't have any reason to believe. When you think what that does, if you gouge out the right eye, if somebody's right eye, what it does is obviously it's painful and you become one-eyed. What it really does is you can still work, you can still plow, you can still live, you can still operate. But what happens when you lose an eye is, your depth perception is affected. Okay, your ability to move in close quarters is affected, which means you're not as effective a soldier as you could be. Okay, so what he's doing here in this is neutralizing them as a military force. I'm speculating here, it's like why? Because there's no explanation. Maybe he just has this weird thing about poking out right eyes. I don't, But
it also identifies that you see people, they have been subject to him. They're
one of you're my slave, you're my dependent kind of thing. It makes it very clear who's in charge here. Okay, so there's any number of reasons why he does it, and he clearly has the military might to make this happen. it's interesting here. The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days so we can send messengers throughout Israel. If no one comes to rescue us, we will surrender to you." And Nahash agrees. Okay? And so you think to yourself, why? Why? And again, I'm just speculating here. This is just these are just the kind of questions I ask. Why does he say yes? Why not just storm the tower and get it over with? Just thinking about it, there's a couple of possible reasons. And again, this is just, I'm kind of thinking what could have happened. It could be that Jabesh is a walled city, and he knows that he's not going to be able to get in there for 7 days. They got to do the whole siege mounts and build the towers and all of that stuff that you do to kind of take over the city. That could be, and it's going to take him 7 days to battle, and this gives his guys 7 days to get everything ready. And in 7 days, he's going to come in and blasting and all of that kind of stuff. And at this point, he's just going to kill him. It could be that his opinion of the state of of Israel, because really, to Ammon and to any city, any ruler at that point, Israel is just a loose confederation of tribes at best. And they're never going to cross over to the east. They're never going to come all the way over here to support them. Okay? Because then they're going to have to deal with my army anyway. So that's just never going to happen. It's kind of one of those deals where, sure, he agrees to it, knowing that it's never going to happen. Okay? Maybe he's just a nice guy who likes to gouge out eyes. But for whatever reason, he says, okay, go ahead. And so the men of Jabesh Gilead, the elders, the rulers of Jabesh Gilead, send messengers out saying, help us, we're going to lose our eyesight, kind of thing. So nation says okay to the treaty, but first they have to gouge out the right eye of all of you, right? Men, women, children, everyone. Okay, it doesn't say just the men, it just says all of you. You're going to just gouge all of your eyes out. So he sends messengers out. So in chapter 11, verse 4, he says, when the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and reported these terms to the people, they all wept aloud. Okay, so there's some meeting area, there's some assembly point, and the messengers come. Now, it does not appear that they're looking particularly for Saul. It's conceivable that they don't even know who Saul is. Okay, and it's also apparent that Saul is not in this assembly. Okay, but people hear about this and they go, oh man, this is terrible, we're sad, and when the messengers came, Saul reported, they all wept aloud. Just then, verse 5, just then Saul was returning from the fields behind his oxen, and he asked, what is wrong with everyone? Why are they weeping? Saul is seeing, wait a minute, I'm the king here, maybe I should do something. I should know these things. I should know what's going on. Then they repeated to him what the men of Jabesh had said. So meanwhile, Saul is plowing his field with his oxen when he hears. Now Saul is the king. Okay? He's the king, and we know from a few verses earlier that he's got valiant men there. Now I don't know why, if he's the king with valiant men, why they're not plowing his field. And he's at home doing the king thing. But still, maybe, again, we still have this. Maybe Saul is still dealing with kind of imposter syndrome. Maybe he's still like, okay, do I really belong here? Is this really my thing? Is this really happening? Kind of stuff. I don't know. But we know that Saul has gone back to plowing his field. Okay, which you'd think as king is one thing you would not have to do. But Saul nonetheless is out there plowing his field. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. So for the second time, we read in Samuel that the Spirit of God comes upon Saul and makes him angry at this setup. And rightly so, because Jabesh Gilead are his people, and he's like, okay, they're going to do this, and Ammon are a bunch of bad people, and he's got to do something with it. So what do? Well, you got to get an army. Right? He's got some valiant men here, but he knows Ammon is a big group, big enough to besiege the city of Jabesh Gilead. So he has to get an army. He's got to muster an army. So what does he do? Okay. It says he takes, lost my place here. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel." Okay, so, a couple of things here. First of all, where did he get this idea? Let's cut up an animal and send pieces of meat to the various things, and that's going to cause people to come. Where does he get this idea from?
Judges.
Perhaps. I think so, but that's, again, I've said it before, I'm making the connection between these two, but I don't recall in the Pentateuch there being a thing that if you need to get a hold of everyone, send raw meat, whether it's human or oxen or squirrel or whatever. That's how you get people together. This is how, again, maybe this is, before the internet and mass emails, this is how they got together. Just send raw meat and that will, maybe that's how we should tell people about business meetings here. Just send a package of raw meat and say, here, you go, wait, First Baptist is sending me a piece of, it looks like a liver of a cat or something. What is this kind of thing? I don't know. That's I have to bring it up at the next deacons meeting.
Well, they have a horse.
I only want steaks.
Yes, pardon me?
I only want steaks.
Steaks, okay, yeah. Kind of thing. So he sends it out. So that's one thought. Where does he get this idea? And I think he's going back with, well, what worked in the past? Well, let's see. I remember this story where they cut, he cuts up an oxen. Now, the next question is, and at first, as I was looking at this text, I'm thinking, okay, Saul is, he's plowing, okay, he's plowing with his oxen, and then he comes back and he kills his oxen, which kind of shows that he's sacrificing, he's kind of getting rid of his old life. I'm embracing the kingship kind of thing, okay? He's embracing the kingship, okay? And that could very well be what happened, okay? But it's not necessarily what happened, okay? Because notice the text says he comes back with his oxen, but he kills a pair of oxen. Is it the same pair of oxen? Perhaps. Could very well be. I don't know. But there's this, and we'll find out through the book of Samuel as we continue on that Saul is all about appearances. That he wants you to have a certain appearance, and it becomes really apparent later on. We'll talk about it. But this could be the first time that he says, okay, I got to really, take on this whole leadership thing, and I'm going to make people think that I'm in it. So I'm sacrificing my own oxen, and that could very well be what he did. Okay, but the text doesn't demand it. All we know is he's cutting up this meat and he's sending it out to the people and going, here. And the people get the message. And the message that he gets. Now, where is Samuel in all this? Is Samuel in the town? We don't know. We don't know where Samuel is. Okay? But Saul has no problem with saying that this message is coming from Saul and Samuel. Okay? Because he says, if you don't follow, this is what will happen. This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel. So he's clearly hitching his wagon to the star, to Samuel's star, which is, Samuel's star is a good star to hitch yourself to. Okay? And Saul does this on a couple of other occasions as we go, you'll see that as we go through the text. But he wants everybody to know, hey, it's just not me. Samuel is the one that appointed me. God, through Samuel. Samuel is the one with the authority. Samuel is the one that everybody recognizes. So I was like, hey, this is Saul and Samuel here. So do people get the idea that maybe Samuel was the one that said Saul? And it could be. So,
Like medieval kings in line with the Pope.
Yeah.
It's religious and
just to have this whole thing, but he does this, sends this meat out, okay? Then the terror of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out together as one. Okay, now this is an interesting, let me go back here. He cuts up 2 pair of oxen, same pair he was using, yes, no, maybe. Okay, and he sends the peace throughout Israel. Okay. Where does he get this idea from? I think from Judges. In 7b, Saul definitely hitches his star to that of Samuel. As a result, the terror of the Lord fell on the people, and they gather at Bezek. Okay, so it's, I didn't have a chance, I was looking at this, but this is an interesting thing. All of a sudden people realize, oh, wait a minute. Because, maybe beforehand they thought, oh, great, he's the king, kind of, It's like maybe you've ever had a situation in your work where somebody above you changed. Your boss changed, or the boss's boss changed, and you think, same problem, different face, right? That's what, you've been doing this job for 25 years, and they just got a kid with an MBA and 23 years old, and he's gonna run things, and you think, yeah, same problem, different face. And then something happens, right? They announce some drastic move, and all of a sudden things are moving around, and you go, whoa, wait a minute. Do I actually have to pay attention to this guy? And to horrors, you realize I do. It's like, and of course that is, one of the great things about working in America these days. You get some guy above you who's less experienced, less educated, younger, not better looking, of course, not than any of us, but all of those other things. And then you realize, wait a minute, I got to do what this guy says. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, now I know that's never happened. It's never happened to me many times. But yeah, be that as it may. So perhaps at this point they're realizing, whoa, wait a minute. We got to take this king thing seriously. Maybe we really have to do something. We have a king now. We got to do something with this guy. I mean, what did Samuel say the king was going to do? He's going to take and take and take and take. And here's Saul going, hey, send your fighting men. We're going to go for a walk across the thing. So it's kind of an interesting, again, in this moment, at this event, there isn't anything inherently, problematic with what Saul is doing, I don't think. But I do think it kind of foreshadows where he's going to go in the future when we see other events taking place. The men of Israel numbered 300,000, and those of Judah 30,000. Okay, so he's got 330,000 people there. And it's interesting here that they know how many. Okay, and so just put a star in that. Okay, so here at this point, they've counted the soldiers. Okay, and somehow or other they just know. Debbie and I were talking about this earlier because, I got in a text discussion with David Montoya about the feeding of the 5,000 in the Gospels. Like, how do they know there were 5,000 people there? Okay, did they count them? Did they give up tickets? What did they? It's one of the texts says that they grouped them in groups of 50 and groups of 100 and things like that. And kind of like how they do, they know, like when they have a demonstration at the Washington Mall, they know that, if you're starting from this point, and if the people go back this far, you've got 100,000 people there. And if it goes back this far, you've got 200,000 people there. And if it goes all the way back to there, you've got 1 million people there. Okay, so they have, and no matter what the national park, so the national parks, I don't know why they do this. Why? Because everybody complains, right? Every time there's a park or there's a big event, the National Park Service estimates there were X number of people there. Okay, and no matter what number they use, it doesn't say, no matter what number they use, whoever's running the event complains that they were undercounted. So why do they even bother? Why do they even bother announcing it? I mean, I'm fine with they're looking at it going, hey, I think there's 500,000 people there. But why go to the newspaper and go, hey, there's 500,000 people here? But they do, I don't know. But they know there's 330,000 people there. Just kind of an interesting thing. It's going to become very interesting when we get to the end of the book of Samuel, near 2 Samuel 26 or 27, somewhere in that area, where David gets himself into big trouble for counting the people. But here, they know. They know how many people are there. They told the messengers who would come, say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, By the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be rescued. When the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. Okay, there are a total of 300,000 fighting men, and it's interesting, and I don't know why. I don't have a good explanation here, but it's interesting to me that Judah is separated out in that. Again, there's 330,000. This is out of 12 tribes. You know, so you'd think, okay, so what is that? 20,000, 15,000 per tribe? But Judah sends twice as many. Okay, so it's like, okay, just making Judah look good, because that's what we do here in 1 Samuel. We want to make Judah look good. Why do we want to make Judah look good? Because who comes from Judah? David comes from Judah. Okay, so just pointing out, Judah had a lot more people there per capita than anyone else. Okay, now Judah may have been the largest tribe, so of course they're going to have, you know, but regardless, Saul reassures the leaders of Jabesh Gilead that they will be rescued, and they are elated. Well, you know, so these messengers are getting in and out, so it's not super tight. It's not a super tight siege here, because they can get in and give the message without actually telling the men of Ammon what's going on. And with, I don't know if this is, I don't know what to make of this, but so in verse 9, it says, when the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. They, verse 10, that is the men of Jabesh, said to the Ammonites, tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever you like. Okay? They don't go to the men of Ammon and say, hey, we're going to be rescued. Now, maybe it's because they figure if they told them they would be rescued the next day, then Ammon would just attack that night. It's probably the best explanation. Okay? It also could be that, you know, they're still inside this walled city, and they just want to see Ammon get their peace. I don't know. It's just interesting to me. They go, oh yeah, we give up. Okay, tomorrow we'll be lining up so you can gouge out our eyes, and so the men of Ammon are sharpening up whatever it is they use to gouge our eyes with, whatever technique they've done for this. Has anybody seen King Lear, the play King Lear? It's a Shakespeare play. One of the best, one of the top two. Hamlet is the best. King Lear is number 2. But in King Lear, it's a very important plot point that one of the sight is a big thing. See better Lear is one of the great lines through the play, and so vision and what you see, you know, is a great theme that runs through the play. But there's an actor, or there's a character who has his eyes gouged out in the play. Okay, this is done on stage, and so it's interesting how they, you know, always it's one of those theatrical things. How are they going to stage the gouging out the eyes, Gloucester's eyes, kind of different things, and it usually involves a lot of fake blood and, you know, things like that. And so I can't help reading this text, but thinking of all the different ways I've seen, because I've seen the play probably a dozen times, and all the different ways I've seen them gouge out somebody's eyes on stage, you know. But regardless, so whatever the Ammonites are doing, they're going to sit back and sharpen their knives or whatever, however they're going to do it. Okay? They told the messengers who had come, okay, et cetera, et cetera. The next day, they're told 3 Saul registers the leader. They in turn related in Nahath that the next day they will surrender. The next day, Saul separated his men into 3 divisions, which is a common strategy. You see this several times in discussion of battles through the Old Testament, and then of course in kind of set 3 divisions, 1 in the center, 2 on the sides. During the last watch of the night, they broke into the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. Those who survived were scattered so that no 2 of them were left together. Okay, so basically Saul comes in with 330,000 men. Somehow he gets 330,000 men into the camp, close enough to the camp that they basically surprise them, is essentially what goes on, and just, we'll show you, and slaughters them okay, so that they disband so much so that they're literally running in all different directions. Those that got away are just, no one wants to be with another Ammonite for fear of drawing attention to themselves and having Saul. Forget about the eyes, they're just going to kill you. Okay? So Saul comes in and has a major victory. So you had this threat against the nation of Israel. The periphery, the edge, okay? Not the heart of, geographically, not the center, not Gilgal, not where Samuel, not that circular or that area that Samuel would travel, not that main area where everything happened. This is on the periphery, out on the edge, okay? This weird town that has been in their history as having caused trouble and this, that, and the other. And Samuel comes in and says, listen, Saul comes in and says, we're going to muster some troops. We're going to go out there and we're going to wipe out the threat to the edge. So suddenly people are realizing, whoa, this guy's serious. This is, what did they want a king to do? They wanted the king to lead them into battle. What does Saul do? Leads them into battle. Okay, and it's a great victory. Okay, those who survived were scattered so that no two of them were left together. Okay. So now Saul leads the troops to the camp of the Ammonites and secure a major victory. Now re-enter Samuel. After this event, after this battle, after this tremendous victory, after this rescuing of the people of Jabesh Gilead, the people then said to Samuel, who was it that asked Saul reign over us? Turn these men over to us so they may be put to death. Okay, remember back in chapter 10, the end of chapter 10, people would say, how can this fellow save us? Okay? How can this fellow save us? How can this fellow rescue us? And now suddenly, there's, I don't know, are these guys fair weather fans? I don't know. Suddenly there's a winning team. Suddenly they're like, wait a minute, oh yeah, I was always on Saul's side. I was always for Saul. Oh, no question about it. I was always there for Saul. Saul jumps in. So maybe Saul jumps in here and he says, no one will be put to death today. For this day, the Lord has rescued Israel. Okay, so Saul is giving credit to the Lord. And certainly the Lord had blessed the endeavor. Saul, however, re-enter Samuel. Israelites, seeing the victory, want to punish anyone who did not think Saul should be king, which I think, that's the YTO, your teacher's opinion, that this would include Samuel. Okay? Now, I don't think Samuel ever was really warm to the idea of Saul being the king. Samuel didn't like the kingship to begin with. Okay, so Saul to Samuel is the the best of a bad situation. It's like, okay, I don't want to do this. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to end well, kind of thing. But and Samuel's right, but he goes through it anyway. But this to me that
coming election.
Yeah, this isn't going to end well.
A lot of parallels there.
Pick your poison.
Yes. Then Samuel said to the people, come, let's go to Gilgal and there renew the kingship. Okay, it's like renew the kingship. Like, how long has it been in operation? And now they're renewing it. This is the third time Samuel's got to go through this. Remember, he had the private ceremony, which was probably hard enough. And then he had to do it at Mizpah. Now he's going to go to Gilgal and say, okay, let's do it a third time. Okay, let's do this again. We're going to renew the kingship. Let's remind you guys what you got into. We've got a great victory. There's no question. Now think about what we said earlier about Saul was told 3 things are going to happen, and you're going to go down to Gilgal and you're going to meet some prophets, and the Spirit of the Lord is going to come upon you. And oh, by the way, there's a Philistine outpost there. And I speculated, should Saul have done something about that Philistine outpost? Okay, text doesn't say. Okay, but imagine. Nothing wrong with imagining. Imagine had Saul taken out the Philistine outpost there in chapter 9, I think it is, 9 or 10. Then the time at Mizpah might have gone a little, Mizpah might have gone a little better, perhaps. just speculation, and he wouldn't have to go through this again the third time. But, you know, it is what it is. So, you know, wishes were horses, beggars would ride, and all that stuff. Then Samuel said, "Come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul king in the presence of the Lord. Okay, now suddenly the people are on board. All the people are on board. Everybody says, yes, this is the guy we want to be the king. Okay, this is the people understanding. I mean, maybe you could look at it. The first time at Mizpah is where the Lord is presenting Samuel or Saul to the people and saying, "Here's your king. Here's your guy," and they're like going, "Okay, well," kind of stuff. So it's like, again, if you look at the current political climate, and it works on both sides of the aisle, that when somebody is first thrown up the flagpole and said, "Okay, this is our candidate," there are people out there who explicitly, sometimes very explicitly, say, "There is no way I am ever voting for this person," or "This person is the worst thing." And this goes back, way back. I mean, this is not just something that happened starting in 2016. There is no way I'm voting for this person. Absolutely not. And then suddenly, as it becomes clearer and clearer that that person is going to get the nomination, suddenly, you know, I may have been a little harsh back there. Suddenly now I'm, you know, the people have come around to them. And so then the party, whichever party it is, suddenly talks about how unified their party is. You know, every party is very unified, like the month before the election. Okay, what I'm looking forward to in this particular election, this is a side note, is that whichever side loses, there's going to be a house cleaning. Like, it's going to be amazing. I mean, whichever side loses, you know, and hopefully both sides. But hey, that's just me. I'm just saying both sides. I think there should be a house cleaning. But there's going to be a major, because there always is a certain retrenching after a political loss, after a presidential loss. But I think this time it's going to be, because the weirdness of both candidates going in is going to be interesting. But here the people are unified. They go, "Hey, this is what we wanted. Yes, this is what we wanted. We wanted somebody who's going to be tall, that we can see, that we can follow, and we're going to go with him into battle. Yes, this is our guy." Okay. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and the Israelites held a great celebration. Big party. Party time. We got our king. We got what we wanted. Whew, what could possibly go wrong? Everything is, we are firing on all 8 cylinders. Everything's coming up roses. We just beat the Ammonites. Next up, we'll take care of the Philistines. Everything's going to be great. Okay. Now, between there and the reality, next week we'll talk about Samuel's farewell speech. Samuel's first farewell tour. I saw a concert last night where a guy refers to another singer who's gone on repeated farewell tours, you know, retirement tours kind of thing, sort of thing. So next week we'll talk about Samuel. Samuel has one more thing. In fact, that's one thing I'm going to.
Are you in class next week?
Oh, next time. I'm sorry.
No,
Next time.
Okay.
Next time I'm here talking, we'll do that.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions?
Is there a class next week?
No,
We're in the fellowship hall next week.
everybody for missions.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
missed that part.
Next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to be in the. Yeah, you missed Ed's. Yes, Ed was here earlier. Any questions? So I'm leaving everything. So this is. I wanted to end here because now this is an up note, right? This is, woohoo, right?
Yeah.
Everything's great. Saul's our guy. We are gonna just take this area by storm. We're gonna have peace. We're gonna have happiness. Nothing could possibly. Happy days are here again, right?
You betcha.
There we go. All right. And you're gonna have to wait 3 Sundays to find out what
The
this.
suspense.
I know. What does Samuel think about this whole
We
thing? So
might steer you and read ahead. You read ahead.
there,
Okay?
that's perfectly fine. That is, in fact, it's really good to sit down. If you have not done so, you should read through the whole book, which is a great. We tend not to do that You know, we tend to read like chapter at a time and let the chapters and verses tell us where to read, but it can be, you know, some of it's really pretty interesting, some of it's pretty fun. As long as you get past the whole gouging of the eyes thing.
Yeah.
Alright, see you guys next week.
I think so.
All right,
Feeling better?
I'll touch base with you
In other words,
first.
I didn't